Hello and welcome to the Jesus Witch Podcast. I'm your host, Lena Elsaya Lee, also known as Lena the Jesus Witch on TikTok and Instagram. The Jesus Witch Podcast is a show dedicated to opening the conversation about including Jesus in witchery practices. The goal of this podcast is to not be evangelical. The goal is to spread the love, light, truth, acceptance, and oneness that is Jesus Christ himself. Here at the Jesus Witch Podcast, we believe all people are loved by God and all people are loved by Jesus. We believe in community and the power of fellowship. We believe in giving whatever you reasonably can to help your neighbor who's in need. And above all, we believe in the power of creating a relationship with Jesus that is authentic and unique to you. Join me for new episodes of the Jesus Witch Podcast every single Monday, and be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. Before we hop into this week's episode of the Jesus Witch Podcast, I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer. In this episode, myself and fellow Christian witches, Mimi, Hannah, and Sarah, talk all about purity culture. We talk about our experiences with purity culture in a very honest and raw way. The topic of purity culture talks a lot about sex and also sexual abuse, so if these things are triggering to you, this episode might be one you want to skip out on. Thank you so much for listening to the Jesus Witch Podcast, and if you choose to listen to this episode, I hope that it helps you on your healing journey from purity culture and the harms that it can cause. Now a quick break from this week's episode of the Jesus Witch Podcast to talk about a few ways you can help support the show. One way you can help support the creation of the Jesus Witch Podcast is to become a supporter of us on Patreon. On our Patreon, there are 4 different tiers that you could choose from, and they're all named after tarot cards. We have the Fool, the Magician, the Hierophant, and the High Priestess. In the Fool tier, you get early ad-free episodes of the Jesus Witch Podcast, extended show note pages when available, Christian Tarot grimoire pages, and access to our monthly community oracle reading. In the Hierophant tier, you get everything from the Fool tier, tarot spreads to help your connection with Christ, Spirit, your higher self. I also like to put out new tarot spreads for each full moon or new moon, wheel of the year, holiday, and zodiac sign. In the Magician tier, you also get 1 Bible-based spell grimoire page each month. This teaches you how to incorporate the Bible into your own spell practice. In the Hierophant tier, you get everything from the Fool and the Magician tiers, as well as a Happy Mail package from me every single month with the ingredients to make a spell, as well as an extra Bible-based spell page for your grimoire. And then you get access to our spellcasting Zoom each month where we do the spell that I sent you together. In the High Priestess tier, you get everything from the Magician, Fool, and Hierophant tiers, as well as an extra Bible-based spell from the Sun and Moon Oily Co. in your Happy Mail package each month, and a one-on-one Zoom call with me every single month to discuss your practice, how you're growing, and any suggestions that I could give to you to help you on your path. Patreon tiers start at $6.66 per month, and you can find the link to that in the show notes page. Another way you can help support the show is by shopping at my Etsy shop, the Sun and Moon Oily Co. Over on the Sun and Moon Oily Co., I offer Bible-based spell oils, ritual bath salts, Jesus Witch or Christian Witch specific mystery boxes, and custom spell oils. Over on my Etsy shop is where you can also book different types of readings with me. I offer tarot readings for your inner child, channel messages from Jesus or from Lilith. I also have a listing for general tarot readings. You could grab a soul contract reading between yourself and another person, or yourself and a deity that you're working with or curious to work with, or even grab an astrology reading for yourself or an astrology reading for your kiddos to help you parent them better and more effectively. There's also Jesus Witch merch on my Etsy shop and so many other things that I am planning on adding to my shop. So head over to the Sun and Moon Oily Co. to check that out. Another thing you can do to support the growth of the Jesus Witch Podcast is join our Discord community. The Jesus Witch Church is our free 18+ Discord community where we host Jesus Witch church services and moon circles. This is your place to ask all Jesus Witch or witchy questions in general and make some really awesome friends. You can find the link to our church in the show notes page. Another free way you could support the Jesus Witch Podcast is by sharing this show with a friend and rating it on whatever podcasting app you're using with 5 stars. Leaving us a nice review really helps get the word out about the show, and don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. Another thing you could do to help the creation of the show is send a donation to the Jesus Witch Podcast via Cash App or PayPal. It takes a lot of time and effort for me to create the Jesus Witch Podcast, and getting donations helps me get the support and help that I need to be able to create this type of content for you. Donations also help keep this podcast free to everybody. So if you love this show and the information that's being put out there, please consider sending a donation to my PayPal or my Cash App. The username on both is the Jesus Witch Podcast, but the link for both of those can be found in the show notes page. And the final way that you could help support the creation of the Jesus Witch Podcast is by sending me a gift. In the show notes page, I have the link to my Amazon wish list. Everything that I put on this wish list was put there to help create content for you. Simply put, buying things off of this Amazon wish list helps me so that I don't have to purchase them myself. So I can put more of my resources in towards making the Jesus Witch Podcast. If you would like to support the Jesus Witch Podcast by buying me a gift or in any other way, you could find all the links to everything mentioned in this ad in the show notes page. Now let's get back to the show. So this week on the Jesus Witch Podcast, we have an extra special episode because it's more than me and it's more than just one guest. This is the first time I've ever had more than one guest on here. But we have all the Christian witches from TikTok on here, the like Christian Witch Bible Study homies. Does everybody want to? So I'm here with Hannah, Sarah, and Mimi. Does everybody want to go around and like introduce themselves? Hannah's on this side for me first, so
Okay, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a Christo-pagan witch. I'm most known for my deity candles, I guess, and my witchy kid skits. But I talk about Jesus and paganism on my page, and it's a lot of fun, and I'm excited to be here again. I think we talked about demonology last time I was on here, which was really fun.
that was fun. That's a good episode. That's one of my most listened to episodes.
Really
Yes, I think it's like maybe 6 or 7.
nice.
Sarah, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, hello. I'm Sarah. I am a more strictly Christian witch, I guess, with like a couple pagan additions. But I'm all over TikTok, talking all things theology, academics, and probably most known for my Interview with the God series, where I just kind of interview demons, angels, saints, gods as if they are people, and just kind of see what they got to say about themselves and the things that they do. And so yeah, a lot of what I do is kind of spiritual jackass, and that's how I like to keep it.
That's like we talked about your interviews with the gods on the podcast way
Oh,
back at the beginning.
And yeah, that's what I was still in the beginning and like still thinking myself very special, and now I've had my ass slapped around a few times, and I'm like, okay.
It's really interesting to hear like the evolution of the way you talk about it. You know what I'm saying? It's
Oh
like
yeah.
Sagittarius was brought down a little bit.
Hello.
I went
Philosophy is
back and
really
listened
fun.
to that. I went back and listened to that episode after getting to know you and was like, this is a completely different Sarah.
A lot of things have happened. I've seen a lot of shit since then.
It was a learning development there. Thank you, Sarah, for being on the podcast again. And Mimi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mimi. I am the Pharaoh Southern Housewife on TikTok, Instagram, and all the places. And I talk mostly about like neurospicy homeschooling and like being a witch and also being neurodivergent and granny witching, which is like very nature focused, using the Bible for spells and, pretty much just digging with the Abrahamic pantheon and ancestor work.
Yeah. That's exactly
Yeah.
what when Mimi was on the podcast, that's exactly what we talked about was granny witching
Yep.
and all that fun stuff. And that was a really informative conversation because I didn't know what that was, even though I pretended like I did. Anyway, so this week on the podcast, for this like season, a lot of people have been asking me to talk about purity culture. And when I sat down to write this episode, I genuinely couldn't like do it by myself. And we had talked about this. If you guys don't follow each of us on TikTok, you should, because every other Tuesday we do a like Christian Witch Bible study where we talk about a different topic in the Bible or in like within the realm of Christian Jesus witchery sort of things. and discuss all of our different perspectives on it. Obviously, like, you heard everybody introduce themselves. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know me. And if you don't, just go to the episode of That's Meet Lena the Jesus Witch, and then you'll know me. Kind of thing. But we all have different perspectives on it. And I couldn't, like, with my very narrow-minded perspective and like what very narrowly I went through, which wasn't like in the scheme of things a lot. Even though it was impactful for me, I couldn't like create an episode on my own. So that's why I wanted to have like everybody here. We had talked about this on the TikTok Bible study, and I thought it went really well. So I wanted to like kind of recreate that in a more concise forum, without the hundreds of trolley comments that we get every time. But so basically, like, we're gonna be talking about purity culture, and like, if you don't know what purity culture is, God bless. But essentially, purity culture is, how do you even describe it? Like, I guess that we should all just go around and say what it is, right? Like, for me, it's the church's view on human bodies, right? And like human sexuality and relations. So it can mean like, the way that a cisgender woman and a cisgender man, interact with each other. It could be like, if that particular church is, what's it called? Open and affirming to people in the alphabet mafia kind of thing. It could even like fall under like how churches require their members to dress, and their views on that. So for me, that's what purity culture is that like, does anybody have like a different view on it or want to add something?
It was very much like, oh, you have to wait until you're married to have sex with someone, as if that piece of paper makes a lick of difference, kind of thing. At least that's the environment that I was raised in. They had some things to say about the queer community as well, but I'll get to that once we like really dive into our experiences.
Mhm.
But that's kind of the emphasis that I grew up with.
Yeah, no, for me,
Yeah,
oh, sorry. You going, Mimi?
it's okay. No, you can go.
All right. Well, I was just like, I don't have tons of practical experience with it, but from what I see of Paul's writings, it seems to me that a lot of purity culture is very much a way to twist Paul's words to do exactly what he was trying not to do, which is follow the same proprietal ideas of women that had existed before Christianity.
Yep. And my background growing up as Pentecostal and Southern Baptist, so super evangelical, almost cult-like. A lot of purity culture was deemed at control. So it wasn't just about waiting until you're married. It was about how you could dress, how you could sit, who you could be around. There was no hand holding. There was no couldn't sit next to, there was a funny phrase, leave enough room for Jesus at the church, at the school dances, right? But that was like a real thing. You get suspended for that. So the other thing is, believe it or not, purity culture bled not just to um, like gender norms and sexuality, but also there was a huge stepping stone from racism with that. They pull out those verses of like, man shall not lie with man, woman shall not lie with woman, but also that everyone should have their own, basically your own species. It talks about the zebra stripes and the leopard spots, and that you should not intertwine leopards and zebras. No shit. And they use that for a lot of racist things and a lot of like, you can't mix people. You have to stay separate, and it was a huge control issue.
That's insane. I have
That's
personally
horrible.
not heard about that one.
Yeah, the
Wow.
last time we did this, it like unlocked in my brain a legit memory, like a core memory. I had a crush on a little boy. I was in love with him. And I got beat senseless because it was a little black boy in my class. And I actually got, like, my family stopped talking to me when I married my current husband, who is Portuguese and Puerto Rican, and they disowned me for marrying a Mexican in their heads. Legit. Just, it's
Damn.
so bad. It's so bad.
That's
Like
hard.
things have gotten better now. Like if my mom listens to this, she's way better now. She's deconstructing herself. She has seen the error of the ways of that church, but like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
real bad.
that is bad, but the reflection and like the deconstructing and also like understanding that those views that I mean, like at some point for like certain people, like yeah, they're genuine, but like I feel like for a lot of them, they're like brainwashed into it. And
Mhm.
it's like
Oh yeah.
where does your thought begin and then like the where does the brainwashing end and your thought begin sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's fucking insane, Mimi. Damn. Um, okay, well now that my brain needed to buffer for a second.
Well, I
Um,
mean, because you're talking about purity, and I mean, we're talking like full white person purity. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was
yeah,
bad for a little while. It was so bad for a little while. Like, shit.
yeah, that sounds insane. Like, I don't know, that's crazy. Um, okay, well, I mean, like Mimi kind of started getting into it, but like I wanted to talk about like all of our personal histories with purity culture. Does somebody want to go first, or should I should probably go first because considering this is, I would be like the natural progression of things. Um,
Yeah,
but
I'll go last again because I'm cleaning up after supper.
nice. Um, so whatchamacallit, for me, so I was raised Roman Catholic, and like there was like the emphasis on saving yourself until marriage, but I didn't really I didn't grasp it, and it didn't wasn't something that like really like stuck with me. Um like at all. So I mean, I remember when I was younger, like wanting to wait until I was married just for like the novelty of it, thinking it was like simpler and like easier, being like, like I don't want to have like a lot of partners kind of thing. And I just thought that it made sense in a logical perspective, but it wasn't like a I need to save myself because of God sort of thing. And spoiler alert, I didn't. I had my first baby, got pregnant with him at 17, so I was definitely not married then. Um, but then I ended up after I had my first baby, I had like a lot of postpartum bullshit, and I ended up in the International Church of Christ, which is a cult. It's a Christian cult. I'm totally comfortable saying that. And their views on purity are like so weird. Like kind of what Mimi was saying, where like you couldn't like sit with certain people and be friends with certain people, like because I am a woman, I was not allowed to be friends with any guys. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
like the reason that I was in that church is because like all the guys that I was friends with in school were at that church. So clearly they were doing something wrong, sitting with a girl at lunch every day. But anyway, I just put two and two together there, right? Um, so all of my friends were guys, so I would constantly get in trouble for that. And then they had like a huge thing with the way you dressed. And like for me, this was like the first time like I actually had a body like I was comfortable in. I'd been like really overweight like growing up. Like I had one of those really awkward phases in middle school. And then after I had my baby, for some reason my body was in the best shape that it was ever in. I don't know what I did. I don't know why. That's not usually how it is. Um, but like I was actually comfortable with my body for once. So I was starting to wear like, clothes that reflected that. And then I was like getting like shunned for that. So I started to like really like dress like ultra conservatively, like LuLaRoe dresses and leggings and all that shit all the time. Like sort of like really like kind of thing. Not that there's anything wrong with wearing like leggings and whatnot, but it was just definitely like a control thing. And then I think the biggest influence for me was like the way that they viewed the queer community. I think that really like impacted me the most. Just like as a mom, like, I don't know my kids' sexuality. I don't know what, they're gonna grow up and identify with. And I couldn't fathom the thought of being in a church that taught my kids that they were inherently like wrong for like being some way that they literally like can't change about themselves kind of thing. So it like had a real deep impact on me. And like they like called queer people like same-sex attracted and like treated them like they're diseased, and like essentially like saying like it's not a sin to be gay, it's just a sin to act on it. And like
Yeah.
yeah, there was this
The tired
documentary
ass
about
shit,
this.
yeah.
Oh, it's fucking horrifying. So, uh, yeah, I think that's my like biggest thing. But like, I think besides like I think for me, the biggest impact was like feeling like my body wasn't my own because I was dressing like a certain way so that I wouldn't make other people stumble, and feeling really shamed all the time, constantly being shamed for being a teen mom. Oh my God, I forgot about that. Oh, I just remembered it as I'm talking through it. Because like he was like an evidence that I had, sex before I was married, and like that's what they treated like him as. Not that they were like mean to my kid, they were awesome with my kid, but like in conversation with me, that's how it was presented, sort of thing. So I guess that's my like history with like purity culture there, and it like made me have a really weird relationship with it, my body, with clothes, with dressing, with being a mom. I had to like really like reclaim that, and sometimes I still have to, sort of thing, and it just like that, those sort of things. um so that's my trauma. Who's next?
Um, we'll go in the same order. Um, I grew up with a very in the middle gray area in between purity culture lens, which I feel like just made me even more confused and left me with more questions than answers as a teenager. So like I was always allowed to like ask questions with my mom. Like I was allowed to ask questions about my body and puberty and periods, and she would tell me the truth, and it was fine. But it was always with the emphasis of don't talk to boys about your period, and you have to wait until marriage, and blah, blah, blah. And it was very much like that in church as well. Or like my mom had my half brother out of wedlock, and what we weren't like kicked out of the church or anything, but she talked about how like she just got all of these weird looks for it. Like people would whisper and people would stare. And I look back on it now, I'm like, why would you tolerate that? But I digress. And I'm trying to think of other stories. The emphasis on like waiting until marriage was always there, but I just didn't care. I was like, no, that's not for me. I'll wait until I'm in love because that was me. That was what I wanted. But it wasn't important to me to wait until marriage. I'm like, God loves me no matter what. I don't care. I'm gonna do what I want. Um and then lo and behold, the first time I ever brought my boyfriend to church with me, because Kenny was still with me when I was like a crunchy evangelical, the sermon just happened to be about abstinence. So that was horrifying. We can laugh at it now, 6 years later, but for a minute there was like, he didn't come back to church with me for several months after that. We didn't talk about it. It was so like this whole sermon about how important it is to wait for marriage, and all of the problems in the world like divorce and assault and all these other things would be solved if the world would just come back to Jesus and wait for marriage, which makes absolutely no sense. And then I think what really did it for me is, I knew that I was queer at a very young age, and I just kind of dealt with the comments that were made, because it was always like, if you're in the LGBTQ community, you're never going to be kicked out of the church. You're never in danger here. You're safe here. We love you. But we don't condone or endorse that lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. But because they weren't going to kick anyone out, I just kind of was like, okay, I'll just tolerate this, but I'm not going to come out of the closet. I know that Jesus loves me, whatever. But I think what really my like I'm done moment was at the church that I went to as a teenager. They had this person who had identified as trans for a while and then detransitioned. Now, there are people who detransition because that is just who they are. They went through a time where they thought they were trans and realized they weren't. Or for whatever reason, someone might choose to detransition is valid. And I want to be really clear about that. But what was not okay was this church then used this person as a ploy to be like, look what can happen if LGBTQ people just find Jesus. She realized that she's a woman after all because she found Jesus. That's what was really harmful about it. And I remember her getting up and talking about how she was going to give a sermon to the youth group about her journey away from the LGBTQ community. And I just remember sitting there, and that was my like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And it was probably pretty shortly after that I kind of started looking into the witchcraft stuff more, because yeah, that was it. I was done. So there's mine.
Yeah, that's fucking horrifying. That's like really, that's like you had like a physical example of that. That was like very similar to the documentary that they showed us at my church, where it was like all these people, they're queer, but they came to Christ and now they still might like feel it, but they're not because they found their
Yeah.
identity in Jesus. And it's like, oh,
And like, I don't know her
so
full
cringe.
story. Like, maybe she genuinely detransitioned because that was her path, and that's for, or maybe not. Maybe there is still a closeted trans person in there somewhere. I don't know. I never will know. But how they used her for that ideology was so messed up.
horrifying. It's like horrifying, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Sarah, if we're going in the same circle, it's your turn.
It's me. No, and also I'm just thinking though, like, oh yeah, assault will just end if you wait for marriage. And like the first thing that
Yeah.
crossed my mind is like, oh yeah, like marital sexual
Yeah, I was
assault.
just like, yeah, assault's gonna
That's
end.
not a thing.
Like,
Jesus heals all wounds.
Yeah,
they'll
that was
oh my
literally
God.
my first thought is like, oh yeah, they're just gonna wait till they're married to assault their wives. Like,
Yeah, and well, they don't think that's real because Paul's like, give your bodies to each other because, like, again, context is dead, nuance never existed. But like,
I mean, and like
Well, like,
keyword to each other. That's like that's
my church did acknowledge that. My church acknowledged like marital assault, but again, if they were real Christians, if they really had Jesus in their heart,
no.
they wouldn't want to do that. And
you so fucking for real.
it's a nice thought, but that's not the real world.
My church's idea of marital therapy was, well, what if you just give him a blowjob? Maybe he'll listen to you and not hit you.
What?
There you go.
I got more when it's my turn. I got so much more. It's
Jesus
so
Christ.
bad.
All right, let me just dive on in here. So
You're gonna have to put like an E for explicit on this.
Gonna have to on this one probably.
I mean, yeah, this topic's a fun one. But I don't know. Like Lena, I grew up Catholic. The only thing is my mom like didn't give a shit about the actual theology. She's like tradition, and she would go to church and like talk to God and completely fucking ignore everything the pastor was saying. She'd be like, yeah, whatever with that guy, whatever, that's cool. But like I remember at one point she was like, who's Gabriel? I'm like, you're fucking joking, right? You're joking. You don't know who Gabriel is, dude. But regardless, so I don't know. No one ever really talked to me about purity culture or any of that shit, mostly because I also stopped going to church probably as soon as I was able to form independent thought because I was like, this is boring. It sucks. I hate it. I want to just delete myself every time I have to go here. So after a little bit of fighting, my mom was like, fucking fine. I guess you're old enough to stay home. And so I never really got it. However, the thing about purity culture is that we live in a very highly culturally Christian society, a lot of Christian hegemony. So even though I didn't directly have some pastor in my face being like, you need to blah blah for marriage, I still very much was surrounded by this idea that your worth is tied to how you look, right? And like how attractive you are to specifically boys. And I grew up being a pretty goofy looking ass kid. Like I had a bowl cut and my mom fucked up my bangs every time on top of it. I had like Aristocats sweatpants and shit. I was like kind of roly poly. I loved food, man. I would, so all these things compiled together, my self-worth was very much in the toilet. I kind of had to be funny to make up for it, but also once I figured out makeup in middle, I watched it. I experienced directly the change of boys who were treating me like I was like, I don't know, maggot infested cheese. Suddenly, when I figured out how to grow my hair out and put on makeup, they were like, oh, hello. Who are you again? As if I hadn't been fucking talking to them the entire of our educational careers. But so that wasn't great. I like to call it ugly duckling syndrome, in which I didn't really like want to be in partnerships with men, especially because like I got my boyfriend in the first year of high school, so that was that. But I still wanted to get that kind of attention. I wanted to be for that male gaze. And that got me in trouble quite a few times because again, I didn't want to actually do anything with these people. I just wanted to receive the accolades and attention of being a desirable object, which turns out when you are desired, people do dumb things. And so luckily I was never like physically hurt, but I definitely experienced some wake up calls that had me like, oh fuck. Oh no. So in essence, yeah, I had to do a lot with like trying to figure out how to, stop being or like dressing myself super provocatively and stop trying so hard to like get attention. And just realize that like it's okay if I look like a potato and it's okay if I don't, and that I really don't need anyone else's attention. So that was the biggest thing, which is kind of like the flip side, I guess, of purity culture, and that it's like I heard a lot of people say things like, oh well, no one will want me anyway because I'm like ugly or something. So it was kind of that weird place, and I kind of ended up being like one of those hypersexual teens as a result. I had a boyfriend, so like I didn't really need an outlet for it, so that was great, but definitely a lot of like hypersexuality as a result of being the ugly duckling for most of my formative years.
I definitely relate to the ugly duckling thing because I was really like, oh.
Every kid looks fucked up. Like this is a problem, and like parents don't make it easier. Like there are some kids who are like they always had this long hair and like they had like this nice face and they had the cute clothes, and then here I was looking like a fucking wonton. So I was like, what is this? Like my mom just like fucked up my hair and like my teeth were crooked and everything was messed up and I just looked like I looked like a wonton. I was like, what? Why do I look like a little dumpling ass? Like
My
what?
teeth
Yeah.
were crooked. I had fangs. I had like the bob cut. I looked like a
Yep.
mushroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the mushroom cut too. And then I didn't do myself anything. I was bullied. And like honest to God, if I was cool, I probably would have bullied me too. Because like I dressed so stupidly. I used to wear like, like the tutus from fucking Hot Topic and like those like fingerless
Yep.
gloves and shit. I was like the epitome of emo culture. And it's
Oh, I
not
had a whole ass foxtail on my ass running
Ah!
around.
yeah. The fucking yep. So
Meanwhile, the
Players.
ancient woman over here wearing the 90s floral dresses because we weren't allowed to wear pants. I looked like a fucking Duggar from Walmart. Like we had the Duggars at home, is what it felt like.
Great value brand Duggar friendly.
oh my god.
Like my mom used to like curl my hair was really long. We weren't allowed to cut it. We weren't allowed to wear makeup. We had to wear dresses most of the time. Like my mom was one of those, like she was the youngest of preacher's kids, so her act of rebellion was to be honest with me about like how my personal body worked as a woman, but I wasn't allowed to ask questions about boys. Because that was naughty. You're not supposed to ask questions about that. I had to wait until I was 6, to ask more questions if I wanted to. 16. That didn't include the because we love each other. And she used to like tight roll my bangs, and they were so bad because I had wavy hair, so they would split 8 different directions, like the fucking Tammy Wynette bangs, just Aquanet everything. Oh my god, it was so bad. It was so bad. It was, and then as I got older, when I finally could wear the clothes I wanted to, it was all like the goth stuff, the fishnets. But I mean, I went full on like Jinkos, like the Crow, Brandon Lee, and Amy Lee from Evanescence, and like Stevie Nicks, and the black and the lace, and just went full the other direction. But still, yeah, like Sarah made a good point about the whole like male gaze thing. We were supposed to be pretty and attractive, which had this huge issue on like I am supposed to be a good wife. I am supposed to be a good woman. So I need to attract a good man. I need to attract a rich man, somebody who's going to take care of me and be a part of the church. So, oh my God. Should I start at square one?
Yeah.
What is okay? Hold on, wait. What is the like fucking I don't know purity culture / ugly duckling to goth pipeline? Like, how the fuck do we all end up here?
Wait, but like I started goth and then I went into purity culture and then I got out and I became really girly girl. So I don't know.
I discovered music that is like about BDSM that also happened to be goth, and that was it. I was like 13. I was reading fan fictions. I was like, here we go. The new Hannah has arrived.
Yeah, I got
Wait,
to
hold
like
on. You
drive
said fan
past the
fiction,
Nine
so I
Inch
need to
Nails
get the
concert in Augusta.
I need to get the fan fiction nugget out of my head. Did you know that animated shows, like kids shows, people write a lot of fan fiction about them, right? And this one person in the church, she did a whole research paper about it, and the most fan fiction she found for like a child show was for Thomas the Train. People write fan fiction for Thomas the Train because they're all based on like true stories, apparently. Like all the tanks are like real tanks, so they like go and like research these like real stories and then make fan fictions about them.
The
What the fuck?
longest fan fiction ever written is like a Mario fan fiction, and
Yeah.
it's like 100-something chapters. I think
Yeah.
it's still being written.
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah, fan fiction.
Anyway,
I love fan fiction, but that's crazy. Anyway,
Sorry, maybe continue.
Mimi,
No,
sorry.
that's okay. No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm just thinking about all the fan fiction now because I remember Wattpad.
Wattpad!
That was good.
that is still a thing,
Wattpad.
unfortunately.
Archive of our own. Like, come on.
I liked Wattpad for the more original, like just pure fucking garbage you could find on there. Like I will put a straw to raw sewage, honestly, and just drink it when it comes to
My favorite thing about Wattpad now is like the TikToks of people bringing like fucking books to like Harry Styles concerts and be like POV, you're the Wattpad girl.
Yes, the Wattpad girl.
Oh my
Which,
god.
okay, hold on. I keep finding ads for some bullshit on TikTok. Like they're like these alpha wolf nonsense live action. Like someone actually took a budget and like had people act it out. And like reading it is already bad. Those little like I'm a werewolf whose alpha rejected her TM black sheep ass. But then like
Yeah.
seeing it acted out with real people made my whole ass stomach just like I don't know twist inside out. I was like, this is the worst.
I was a fanfiction.net kind of gal. I
The
did
creme
not
de la creme here.
discover Wattpad until my teen years, until like middle school. And then someone that I went to middle school with wrote a fan fiction that started an international rumor about my favorite singer having a daughter. And some people still think that he actually has a child. He does not. It was from a fan fiction that this girl that I went to middle school wrote. So that's my
That's going on a fucking resume, dude. That's resume level.
Yeah, that's epic.
yeah. So
International
anyway,
record.
purity
She should clap
culture.
herself. Awesome.
And then there was Live Journal and Zanga for my elder millennials and Zennial crowd listening
Actually,
tonight.
do.
We stand. We remember.
Yeah, but everybody knows that the real like winner for fan fiction and roleplay and everything was Tumblr. So just gotta
Yeah.
Tumblr was the best. I miss it.
I was there for DashCon.
I
The
Oh my
fucking
God.
ball pit.
Oh my god, stop me too.
So, all right, back to the purity culture. Okay, let's get back. Fan fiction is also like that's how we express ourselves when we started getting out of purity culture. That's where I'm gonna leave it with that.
Yeah.
The safe way to experiment.
100%.
Yeah, the safe way to experiment. Absolutely. So the biggest thing that I remember is that as a child growing up, everything was already my fault. If I was misbehaved, I dishonored my father and my mother, and obviously it was my fault because I am a child, but also because I'm the girl. My job was to be the helper. My job was to make sure that I took care of my brothers and helped my mom and did all the things. But then I have a long history of sexual assault. Started when I was about 5. And as I got older and I started to ask more questions and be curious about like my body, what was going on, things like that, I was always told, oh, that only happens to bad girls. That happens to naughty girls. That's not a real thing. So I always had this thing that's like, oh, well, I'm obviously bad. And then I was like, as I got older and more precocious and pushed back against the ideals of the church, and when I started questioning, like, where do, if God and it makes us both, where does he get the idea of woman from? When that started popping in my head about 9 years old, I decided, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go and do this on my own. So I went hypersexual like Sarah, and I wasn't going to let people tell me what to do with my body anymore. I wanted to do it. So even though, like, the assaults continued. Not anybody directly in my family, just like stupid boyfriends and, babysitters or, things like that. People that we trusted. And it just continued to happen over and over again. And anytime I asked a question like privately, it was always, well, how did you tempt him? What did you do? Oh, I'm a fucking kid. What do you mean, what did I do? So I started losing more faith in it, and I kept getting the whole, if you really loved God, you would be in that mindset of like your body will stay pure, and anything you're doing just shows that you don't love God, or that you're not following what He wants. You're falling into like Eve's temptation and whatnot. It was just really stupid. So the indoctrination started young. And even now, like not so much the idea of like the chewed bubble gum or the toothpaste squeezed out of the tube kind of analogies, which some of you guys will know that talk with, put, toothpaste in your, or gum in your mouth. And if you chew it, you can't unchew it, which is what happens when you have sex before you're married. Yeah. That aside, when, as the idea, the pervasive idea of I am only as good enough as what I can offer my husband, like sexually, is something that has carried with me my whole life, because it started, like I said, when I was really young. And I don't think you ever get over that. You know what I'm saying? It's like when you start that young, I don't think it ever leaves.
Yeah, and I think that that's something to be said too, like, and it's important to kind of bring up that, like, when we were like talking before we started recording, I said this exact phrase that like trauma is relative. So for somebody, like, when you talk about something that you've healed from, like, are you really healed from that, or is there like, 2 days later you're gonna have a PTSD attack from it, kind of thing. So that's kind of like to bring to your point, like how this was something that started for you so young that it's something that you feel like you can't like truly fully heal from. I'm sure at some points it'll get like better, and at some points it'll get worse, and like, some points it'll feel more neutral, but like it'll always be there. And I think that that's like important to kind of recognize and validate as well. And I think that, a lot of people will be able to resonate with that specific message too. And not just on like the purity culture level, on like the whole like fucking religious trauma level. Because if you think about like the shit that we all went through with churches, like that's like psychological and like spiritual abuse. Like no other word to like put it there. Like it's straight up like systematic abuse to keep you controlled, to keep you in a very specific line of thinking and line of like doing. So it's definitely like that's just an important, honestly, I feel like an important point to share. And I thank you, Mimi, for sharing your experience with that. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Even as like a grown woman, when I went back to the church, because there was like nothing out where I live when I moved to Wisconsin, we went to the church, and I swear to God, like 3 of the 5 big things that we had when we started MOPS, they were like, oh, well, just make sure you take some time and pour into your husband. He's not going to listen to you. Men have sexual needs, and you have to meet those needs, or he's not going to listen to you. It'll be your fault that your marriage is deteriorating. Like, no shit. I was like, what the fuck? It was
Yeah.
awful.
That was a thing in the ICOC as well. And I know about that because I was not necessarily married like in the time, like Jack and I obviously like we had Dexter together. But we weren't like, married. And the only reason I knew about that was because as a mom, I was friends with all the married women. And like I said before, the guys, my high school friends, my guy friends brought me in, right? And like so I hung out with their moms because like I didn't know who else to hang out with, so I hung out with all my friends' moms. So they would like talk about things like that and how it was like basically like, like they need to keep their husband satisfied, like, they need to make sure like if something's going wrong, like they need to be like, the one to fix it, like with their body kind of thing. And I remember like thinking to myself, like, oh, that's horrible. That like how can you solve problems with like sex like that? Because that's just not how like Jack and I ever did it. Um so it's just like it's really really bizarre. It's also like, where's the like man's accountability in all this? Like it takes two to tango, takes two to fight, takes two to make up. So why is it only one person's responsibility and one person's body that's being put on the line?
Yeah, no,
I'm
this
really trying to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
being in person, it's easier to tell who's gonna talk first. But no, this is why it's like I'm very grateful that like my encounters with the church were extremely minimal, and that like when I started being very kind of not almost anti-Christian when I started realizing what like other churches were saying, or just like churches in general. Like when I realized like, oh, not everyone had the cute experience I had where I basically just went to sit there for an hour and then fucked off. Like I was baffled, but I'm so glad that my mom raised me to be like, yeah, fuck that. Beat somebody's ass if they try nonsense. If someone blames you for what a man does, beat their ass too. Like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were a lot of, oh, be the Ruth to his Boaz. Like, did you actually read the story, you guys? Bitch crawled into his bed. Like, I don't
Yeah,
think you
that
really
was,
understand
like-
what that is.
No, I don't think they understand that story either. Like that story is not the romantic story that Christians think it is.
No.
No, and it's huge. I also got the big, like, everything was my fault, but also everything was my fault because my husband was still Catholic. Like, they weren't true Christians, so having a God honoring marriage and a God honoring, like, lifestyle wasn't going to be attainable. And that was, like,
what is
another part of
fucking
the
anti-Catholic?
area of. I don't know, but that
No.
was like, see, purity culture has like tiers of control. It's
Yeah.
not just about who you have sex with or how, it's how you have sex.
Mhm.
It's literally how you have sex. Like every part of it.
Oh my
And I
God,
feel like
Mimi! Oh,
what?
you gave me a flashback. There's a website called Christian Friendly Sex Positions.
Shut
Oh
up.
my god.
Dead
Did
out.
you get the flashcard?
Shut
Lena,
Dead
did you get the
ass.
flashcards?
Is it just
I got
one?
the
Is it just
flashcards.
one? Is it just
No,
missionary?
there's multiple. There's a plethora. Christians like to get freaky. Like evangelicals, they be fruitful and multiply. Like they
This is
gotta
giving
be
Howard
fruitful.
Is
Virgo
it
vibes.
all just like man on top though? Like
Nope.
Mhm.
what?
Wait,
Nope.
then what is unfriendly?
Right?
Wait,
Like
mine were
Like
all
just straight,
men on
I'm
top.
definitely gonna have to put an explicit on this one. Straight up, what's unfriendly? What they say is basically like anal and like non-consenting sex. Stuff like
I mean
that.
what?
Nope. Anal was bad because it's considered sodomy and it doesn't procreate and therefore is wrong.
Well,
but
okay,
blowjobs
the
though.
sex you're supposed to have.
explanation-
Wait. But
The explanation-
blowjobs though.
What?
No, he can't come in your mouth. Nope. Nope.
No.
He has to finish inside of you. That's the whole purpose. Having sex
Oh well, yeah, that's
only
with,
glorifies
yeah,
God when you're trying to have a
Catholicism.
baby. What the fuck?
So, oh god, this is going to be a great segue into a conversation about birth control because I'm just like,
oh,
that's its own situation. Okay, oh, they have to do that inside. Okay, well, I guess you can't wrap it, and then what? That's how you end up with fucking 8, what, K plus 8, whatever the hell, 17
Yeah,
kids.
well,
born,
So if you're
They want the Duggars.
if you're
trying to be a fucking 3D printer in real life.
Yeah, well, if you're a Catholic person or a Christian person or something who's following this like very strict, like quiverful or like whatever, like type of
I hate the quiverful. Children are the arrows, or like arrows in the hands of warriors.
Again, trying to be a human 3D printer. Like, what the fuck?
yeah, they don't get it. But like the whole thing with that, like if they're trying to not get they every time that they like, like there's relations, there needs to be the opportunity for children, right? So the way that they'll avoid that is like in reality, you can only get pregnant like 4 or 5 days out of the month. So if you're like tracking your cycle and you like, know your shit, you're not getting pregnant, like kind of thing. So that's how they work around that. But that's their birth control.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you know what? No, I'm not.
Or the natural
as a
method, so
natural
that
family
you can
planner,
lose the baby weight.
works. So, like it works, but you need to have the right intentions for it. Like mine's not like God honoring. Mine's just I can't. Like I'm happy with what I'm doing right now.
I've been on birth control for 10 fucking years straight.
Nice.
You have.
I'm pregnant on birth control, so I'm not doing that again.
I'm just
Oh, I
annoyed
hate
having
it,
to remember
but-
control.
I had my husband get a vasectomy. Hey,
Nice.
burden of
What?
responsibilities on the dude.
which is how it should be.
Living my dream, because I'm like every time like the alarm to take my pill go off, and I'll be like, again, I have to do that again. Fuck.
Mhm.
I started getting blood clots in my legs and they were triggering my migraines really bad. So my doctor's like, hey, so you know how you have to take this heart medication? You should probably take that instead of birth control. Let's look at getting your husband a vasectomy or you getting your tubes tied or something. Come on. It's like, yeah.
Yep. Oh, yep. Anyway, I think that's a great segue into the
Yeah.
so like it actually is. What's your view on purity culture now? Like what like how has it changed for you? So for me, like I've definitely become a lot more lenient. I feel like before I was like, ooh, like sex. Like this conversation would not have happened with Lena like a year ago, like straight up. Like if you listen to like the Spicy Magic episode of the Jesus Witch podcast, you can hear my whole entire body red from my like toes to my
There
you know,
was so much giggling.
oh, it's so bad. I need to redo that like with serious Lena now that like I can actually like say like it was funny because for a while Christina Stina Face 98 on or 88, I don't remember. I think it's 88 on Discord. She was like, for a long time, she's like, does Lena even know how she got her kids? Like that's how bad I was. Um, so like I think
You
that
held hands, didn't you? I fucking knew it.
that's yeah. I mean, I was so bad. Um, but I think that that's like changed. And I also like kind of like for me, I kind of realized like you could take purity culture and like you could take like that purity aspect and like reclaim it in your own way. Like there's a lot of verses about like not being unequally yoked. That was another big thing that was thrown at me with the church. Because my husband is not like a Christian, right? He's he was never a Christian. Now he's more like, open to spirituality than he was before. And he does like, certain like witchy things with me. But he's definitely not a Christian. I don't want him to be a Christian. I don't want a Christian husband. That sounds horrifying.
Same. We're all just like, no.
I'm
That
good.
was a big thing for me too in my decision to leave the church is everyone was talking about what a godly husband is. And I'm like, I don't want that.
Sounds like
Yeah.
a dick. Oh
I don't
God, I
want
did so bad though, and then I realized that a godly husband was literally just like a narcissistic, power-hungry
Yup.
fuckwad who just wanted to
Mhm.
look good for everything. And
Yup.
now I'm happy. My husband got confirmed, and that's it. He's like, I have my own relationship with God. You can do whatever the fuck you want with God. Just like, please don't pray to demons in the living room. And I'm like, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. That is fair. Yeah. No, I also like I really wanted like a guy. I was so upset. Like I really wanted Jack to come to like church with me. I was trying to get him to come to church, trying to get him baptized. He actually started
Yep.
studying the Bible at one point right before I left. Kind of thing. Like I really wanted that, but then I realized like no, I don't. So for me, it's like kind of realizing like the whole like in one breath Paul says like don't be unequally yoked, but then the other he says like wives of unbelievers, like your faith is going to make your husband whole, and like husbands of unbelievers, your faith is going to make your wives whole, sort of thing, right? So like I kind of realized that like I only need to have faith for me, and that was really like empowering. And then like I also like Song of Solomon, that book really helped me because homeboy's talking about like doing things with his like 300 concubines, and it ended up in the Bible. So like clearly like having fun with my one consenting husband is not wrong.
Yeah.
It was we were forbidden from reading that until we were ready to take like our marriage classes.
Marriage classes, bro.
Yes,
Fucking
so if you were like when you got older and you were considering dating, you only dated if you were really considering marriage. That was a good thing. And then you only read that like with the deacon or the deacon's wife or the pastor and the pastor's wife. Like it was very risque, and if you were caught reading it, you got into trouble. And you're like, what the fuck? I appreciate like the imagery, but at the same time, like making it forbidden just backfires every time. Why don't they learn that?
It's like it's literally in the Bible. That's like my whole like even though the my church wasn't that bad, and they were bad. They weren't that bad. But I think we've all established though that Mimi was at the worst church out of all of us.
Yeah, Mimi, every time you say something, I'm just like, dude, this is
Yeah,
like
every time Mimi
uh,
talks, it's
this is
like,
like Stephen King's Carrie level ass. Like,
yeah.
the other side of that, which is really bad, is that it was my grandfather who was our preacher for most of my childhood,
Ah.
fucking
or
bye.
like
No.
my uncle. My grandfather got a lot better, especially as he got older. He got a lot better. Um, and he was the only one of the family who would talk to me after I got married to my second husband. But yeah, it was it was very interesting. I still to this day get the whole, well, your life would be a lot easier and a lot better if you weren't living in sin. And I'm like, this is why I don't talk to you.
Also, it's just like, what do you like? This is so troublesome because it's like, hey, dipshits. According to the Bible, apparently, TM, we're all living in sin because none of us are perfect and we all fuck up sometimes. Like that. That's just basic shit. So what do you mean? No one is better than anyone else. Like no one is less fucking it up because
Yeah,
they
the whole all sins are equal at the foot of the cross. Like that's
yeah
Yep.
like so that's why
So
it's like
a lie is the same as murder to them sometimes. They'll pull that verse.
mm-hmm.
yeah, but this is why the point of Jesus' parable with the woman not getting stoned is so important because it's like, oh, did anyone else is anyone else fucking blameless? If not, shut up and move on. Like mind your fucking business.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a single person that can literally say like they've never like quote unquote sinned in their life and they've never like had like a bad thought. Like this was like literally like somebody I was on live today and somebody asked me if I thought I was nice. Just like such a like a fucking reflective ass question. And I, I gotta think about it for a minute. Honest to God, no, I don't think I'm nice. I don't. Because I have, because I'm a bitch. But like in practice, am I nice? Yeah, because I'm not gonna like let that bitch take over, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
Like,
hold on. In fairness,
I
right? It's the old adage, right, where it's like people, and no offense, maybe, but people in the South are nice, but they're not kind. People in the North are kind, but right. So
You are
maybe
absolutely right.
okay, no.
but Lena and I got that like we're a complete. We'll be a bitch, but like if you are actively in need, we will help you. We
Well,
will just
absolutely.
also we will absolutely bust your balls the entire time that we're
Oh
helping you.
yeah.
But we'll
That's
help
how
you.
it works. Like, oh,
Like, I
you got
am
yourself
a kind
lost?
person, but not a nice person. But that,
Right.
again, the purity culture, being the oldest daughter, that we need to be good girls. We need to be nice. But that's how you learned how to talk out of both sides of your mouth, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would probably get my ass eaten up if I go to the South because I'm an obtuse dumb bitch, and I would just be like, "Oh, you think my heart is blessed? Thanks." And and I'd be like, "Well, oops."
You're too New England to go to.
I'm like, "Say what you mean, or I don't got time for it." That's why I couldn't live in the South. Everyone would think I'm an
I,
asshole.
I do
That's the
appreciate
one
my
thing about the
husband
North, right?
the
Like we'll just
first
like
time.
say shit straight out. Like you will see encounters in stores of people being like, "Why are you being a dumbass?" And you're like, "Oh my God, only here?" Like really, it's like an only here thing. But
No, so my husband from Connecticut, he's from Connecticut, and his first words to me, the first one I connect with, was, "Don't make eye contact with people." I'm like, I don't understand. What do you mean? And I had somebody try to kill me in the bathroom at the mall because I looked at her and she thought I was looking at her funny. But if you go down south, if you don't make eye contact, you're rude.
yeah.
Out there, you think you're uppity. You think you're
Oh
too good
shit!
to say, smile and wave at somebody. Like,
Mhm.
No,
but you know what? The first time I ever told him, "Bless your heart," he'd stop for a second. He goes, "You just call me a dumbass?" Like, yeah, I did.
yeah. No, my boyfriend and I are like kings of don't fucking look at people because I like that's code in New England for fuck off, I don't want to talk to you. And
Yeah.
like no one wants to talk to anybody. So none of us make eye contact because eye contact is like how you get locked in some conversation you don't want to fucking be in. We'll never look at people. But we're going to North Carolina soon, and I know that everyone's gonna think we're fucking demons because I ain't looking at people for shit. No, don't look at me. Pretend I'm not here. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want. Nope.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. No. No, 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 no. That's
I'm
yeah.
a tourist. Don't talk to me. I'm not from here. Fuck you.
However, like
That
whenever we
happened
go
to
to
me.
Massachusetts, because I go to Massachusetts quite often, The people there, and maybe just because I'm in like the ruralest bumfuck area of Massachusetts when I go, but they're like so friendly. And it's like, I mean, like it's a thing here too, like in upstate New York, people are so friendly. Like it's more like the South kind of culture, and it's like I'm from
That's
downstate.
because you got the mountains. You go
Yeah.
up in the mountains, you're gonna have nice people. That's just the way it goes. But also,
We have climate.
Maryland.
It's horrible.
Maryland is like half upsetty, half southern nice. But anyway, back to purity culture.
The complexities of northern southern
I love
culture
how
here.
before we like started this, I'm like, this should be more straightforward because we won't get distracted as much.
No,
No.
at least
don't have-
2 or 3 of us have ADHD here, so it's
Yeah.
not gonna.
I mean, are we sure
And
not?
I'm also autistic and have a lot of info dumps. Here we go.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Yes,
Let's
info
go.
dump about purity culture. Let's do that.
Oh my God.
So, Mimi, what are your current views on purity culture?
Like I said, it's to me, it is an idea of control. So
Mm.
my idea with it, I have 4 daughters, and so I'm teaching them about how to love and respect themselves by accepting who they are and knowing their boundaries. You know, I feel like that's more important than being lenient just because you're supposed to be nice to a boy. I also have one child who is queer, and I'm queer, so that's always really fun. I know that I'm married to a man, but he was. I have had many girlfriends in between my marriages, and so I just always ended up with a dude. It's just how it happened.
Even
They're
if
the
you're
only ones
a
who
woman
seem to.
who's with a dude and you've never been with a woman, but you still identify as queer, you're valid. So, like, just saying.
Oh, absolutely. Bi erasure does not exist in this house.
Yeah.
Amen.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just saying.
No, absolutely. That's a struggle, and that's a huge struggle with purity culture in the church too. Is like, oh, you're just trying to be rebellious. You're just experimenting. You'll come back to God, and you'll come find a good, nice man and settle down. Like, like. But I also come at things very like scientifically at first. So when everybody was asking how babies were made, I was like, all right, well, this is how babies were made. I found some really nice books, and they explained that a baby was growing in mommy's tummy because mommy and daddy have sex. Sex is an act that is between consenting adults, and mommies make eggs and eggs make babies with sperm. Granted, the language was a little it has been many years since I got that book. And my oldest is like 15 now, so obviously societal language has changed. The idea is still there.
Yeah. And that's like the gist
So
of what like a kid's gonna understand, cut and dry, basically.
right, like I am the mommy. This is how the baby got into your mommy, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, hey, if you have any questions about your body or how you're feeling or anything like that, let's talk about it. Let's look at how society is making you look. Because, like, right now, we've got the whole anti trans movement coming through. I need that broom, child. Let go. Help. She's stealing my dustpan. And, we're talking like, who's safe, who isn't? What would happen if, any of my children were trans? What would we go? Steps to take? How could we be a safe place for people? Things like that. And conversely on that, how to also like the prospect of children. So we had talked about like children being the big thing. You want all those babies, and like all my girls are like, I don't want kids, and I'm like, oh, fucking blame me, man. Kids are exhausting. But like, it's just really how do we go about like accepting places if you want children and accepting places if you don't want children, and like every year something new comes up, so it's always learning something different. But it's more just being, how hard is it to just love your child no matter what they say, with the exception of murder. I'm still gonna love you if you've murdered somebody. There'd be a better damn good reason why you killed somebody.
Yeah.
So, but like, why is it so hard to just accept the child that you birthed? That is my child. You know, they are their own people. They have their own thoughts and ideas and passions and stuff. So why can't I just accept whatever it is? You know, why is it so important to follow a strict book? Are they kind to people? Do they love people? Or do they follow the tenets of like do unto others? Awesome.
Mhm.
Who the fuck cares what they do in their bedroom?
Yeah, that's like to like piggyback for me. It's like, do they like are they respecting themselves and like others kind of thing?
Right.
Like,
Holding their boundaries, making sure they understand consent. Yeah, everything.
yeah, and that's like I think that's
Like,
like reframed like when we talk about like taking back purity culture, like reframing it. That's what it like is explaining
yeah.
kinds of things to our kids in a more a healthier framework versus like control and like you do this and you're gonna die like sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're gonna
Yeah.
die if you have sex before you're married. Well, I guess I'm in
Yeah.
trouble.
We're all gonna die. Oops.
It's like the Mean Girls. Mean Girls. It's like don't have sex,
Yes.
you'll get chlamydia and die. It's like, oh, comprehensive. Thanks. But
Yeah.
although there is another like angle of this, and I think like as we get more like I notice people they always pendulum swing. So like they'll go from extreme purity culture to then like super hypersexuality, and then kind of like fall finally somewhere where it's just like I'm a person who sometimes enjoys a good time. And I think there's also an element of like sex can be self-harm. People can
Yes, it
absolutely,
can.
yeah, people can get into relationships and situationships that are solely for the sake of treating their body like a meat bag. And I feel like that's another
Yeah.
consequence of purity culture is that it's like, well, okay, none of it matters, including me. And then you just start like treating yourself like expendable. It's all wrapped up in that extreme pendulum swing. So it's like, got to get somewhere in the middle where we were like, okay, well, I'm not the worst person ever if I have sex, but I'm also like worth more than throwing myself at anyone with a pulse.
Mhm.
Verse 2 of Waterfalls by TLC. Don't go chase the waterfalls. Literally about having sex to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get
Wow.
off
Wait,
the
that's
surface. Give me back
what
my
that
means?
means? Oh my God, Mimi.
Yes. Okay. So the first verse is about doing drugs. The second verse is about having sex and getting an STD and AIDS and dying because it was in the middle of like the AIDS epidemic.
What?
Basically talking
Hey.
about being a gangbang. Talking about don't go chasing waterfalls, don't go chasing the big stuff like that. You know, stick to what you know, stick to the life that you have. Nice, slow, steady things, and then you won't die.
I can never listen to that
In your
song again.
90s.
Oh my God.
That's well, I think that's like the biggest takeaway that I've personally learned so far.
What did you guys think?
I thought that song was about hiking.
I don't know what I thought it was about. I
don't even think I have the song TBH, so I'm just kind of like, oh well.
That's why I associate it with hiking because I always see it on reels with waterfalls. Okay.
I mean, that's fair, but no, it's literally about having promiscuous sex, getting an STD and or AIDS, and like dying because of it. Because he was just using his body to feel something. He says, "It doesn't matter, baby. It's good to me."
That's horrible.
Okay.
That's
That-
sad.
That
Well,
helps transition into my point, though, into what I think of purity culture now, and that is that 2,000 years ago, when the Bible was written, they didn't know what STIs were. They would do an activity with a partner and then wake up with a rash, and 2 weeks later they were dead. And the villagers put two and two together and were like, "Oh, this must be some kind of curse from the gods in polytheistic culture or God in monotheistic cultures," and then they wrote it down. So nowadays,
Quit trying to put your toes in the soap.
nowadays that any infection or disease or illness is not the wrath of any god and is just a part of life. And some STIs can be cured in like a week with a trip to the pharmacy, and the ones that can't be cured, you can still live a pretty nice life with now. That was not the case 2000, like chlamydia, you can get rid of in a week now, but 2,000 years ago was a death sentence.
Shit, even 60 years ago, it was not a good time.
Yeah.
We were just coming out with shit to take care of that.
Yeah. So I kind of put that together and was like, Oh my God, that probably, and they probably weren't even like 100% sure that babies came from sex. They were probably like, we think so, but we don't know for sure. So just the lack of knowledge of how shit worked back then, once I came to that conclusion, I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And therapy also helped. And my therapist at the time when I was in college recommended a book called Pure by Linda K. Klein. Um, she's still a little crunchy Christian for my taste, but she's queer affirming and is like, go have sex, just be safe. So that's really like what matters is for people who still identify as Christian, still love Jesus, but have a sex drive and feel guilty about it. That's a really good book just to kind of get you into your deconstructing of purity culture ness. But also,
Oh, and masturbation is healthy and beautiful.
yes, absolutely. But also, whether you have
That's what that book reminded me of. I'm sorry. The book reminded me.
I'm so red now. That brought
I
up
love
Bruno
it,
Mars.
I'm just kind of like, hell yeah. I'm so callous to all of this. I was like taking the BDSM test in high school and showing my friends the results. Like that's the kind of dynamic that I had as a kid. So I
Fucking
still
same.
Meanwhile, we're in high school and
Vampire.
like singing Britney Spears songs, not knowing what they're about, and like people having to literally spell it
Yeah.
out for me. Like, Lena,
Meanwhile, being on Vampire Freaks, also taking
Oh my
Oh my
BDSM.
God, yeah. No, literally, like, I don't know. I was always like, again, hypersexual. So as soon as I was able to get my hands on any kind of toy, I was like, hell yeah. But
Dude, can we talk about all of the Bellesa ads on TikTok this time of year? I'm partnering with Bellesa Boutique, and if you click my button, you'll get the email for a coupon. And it's like, I get blocked on Clock app if I show a little too much cleavage, but we can show full-on vibrators for Bellesa season, and it's nothing.
okay, I think that's
it
you because I
just
haven't
shows
seen
how
a single one of
different
those.
my
Yeah, I was like, what?
my For You pages, because I have never in my
Oh, well, okay. In
Okay.
that case, never mind.
I get those. I got those more around Valentine's Day though, and I'm just like, what?
What shit,
Hi,
y'all?
the influencers being like, I'm partnering with Bellesa Boutique, and if you click my thing, you can get 30% off.
That's seriously
No, I get
girls
perfume.
that
That's
on
about it.
TikTok like that.
Oh, I
Damn.
grew
Like that's the
people I
internet.
grew up. No, the people I grew up around thought pure romance was nasty and dirty. Like,
That's the
if you
MLM.
know the yeah, it was
But
like
they
That is
just don't
that.
like
we're pure
feelings.
yeah, it's like, oh my God, what? And God forbid, I got a job over the summer. I was like 18 before everything went insane, working at a lingerie store. I thought my mom was gonna die.
Oh my
How
God.
could you do this to me? I'm living like 3,000 miles away. You don't even know what I'm doing.
Fuck.
You're peddling sex. Most of the people that come in here are like middle-aged women. What do you want from me?
Yeah.
But what
I
if
thought
you
they, I thought they could do whatever they want if they're married. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
But
Yeah.
what if a man comes in there? Good for him. I'll help him find a really nice boa. Like, what do you want me to say, Mom?
like, what do you mean? What if a man comes in here? I don't know. Does he got titums? In that case, give him a bra. Like, what the fuck you mean?
It was still super hush hush about like being gay and drag and all of that fun stuff. Like the idea of being trans, of being gay and everything. It was one of those like we noticed the people who were in our community, they were very fringe and they weren't spoken of
Oh.
Yeah.
unless they were coming to church. So it was almost like they were lovers, even though it was like we love everybody, but we just don't want you to sit next to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's Ugh. That's really like what it boils down to is like it's like this weird like othering based on your like body, and it's just I don't get it.
Well, and another thing that it is, and so this is kind of like the hop off Hannah. So it's like not only did purity culture back in the day revolve around, I mean, for ancient people, they got a lot of right answers with the wrong equation. They figured out that blood was full of bloodborne pathogens, even though they didn't have germ theory. So that's pretty fucking impressive. But not only was it like an STD thing and like not getting rashes or other such, but it was also a fucking weird ass time where like slavery was totally cool and women were not considered like full people. So women's greatest asset, their greatest value lied in whether or not they were a virgin before marriage or not. That's why we have all those whack ass laws about like you gotta marry your rapist and like stupid shit because literally she was damaged goods. Like this man broke it, so he's got to buy it. That's literally what the thought process was, and like that's not
still the thought process in the South.
and that's still kind of fucking yeah the thought. But my point is back in the day, like I'm talking 5,000 years ago. Yeah, shit worked a little different, and there's nothing we can do about that. It sucks. No one likes it. No one's saying it was good, but that's what they had to work with at the time. So like a lot of these purity culture things were based off of that at first. And that's why Paul was so radical. And that's why it's such a shame that the Acts of Paul and Thecla got taken out. Because in the Acts of Paul and Thecla, we have Thecla who the whole point of her story is that she's listening to Paul talk about like, hey, it's really cool if you just don't get married and have kids ever. And here she was, 13, about to be married to some fucking Thamirist dickhead, probably 30-year-old motherfucker. And she was like, wait a minute, I can have my body for me. I don't have to let anyone touch it ever as long as I live. Like she was just stuck at the window, as it says, like a spider listening to this. She got almost burned at the stake by her own mother for it, right? So the whole point of the story was like radical self-reclamation. The point of not getting married wasn't about purity. It was about fuck you, I don't have to give my body to anyone. Because like a lot of cultures, women were supposed to stay virgins until they had their first blood and then sell them off as fast as possible. So this whole idea was very much radically liberating, actually, that people wouldn't have sex at all because that's them saying, nope, my body's mine and I don't have to give it away to anybody.
Yeah.
So this is why also we get Timothy where it's like, oh, women are redeemed through childbirth. They have to get married. Is a radical departure from everything else Paul's ever said. It's because Paul didn't write it. And then also it was written in retaliation to Thecla's story and other stories like this, like the Gospel of Thomas, I think, where he goes to India and convinces the prince and princess like not to boy because it's actually Jesus there saying, fuck having kids, that sucks. Why do you want to do that? Jesus was very fuck them kids in the non-canonical gospels. Like, but the point being that like Paul was very much about, hey, your body belongs to you. If you can't handle yourself, better to get married than accidentally boink up and down the whole fucking coast. But like otherwise your body is yours. Don't let other people tell you what to do with it. So like the fact that Christians do this purity culture shit now is literally just reverting back to Thecla's position when she was being sold off as fast as possible. And then she's expected to just be a living fleshlight forever and ever.
A living fleshlight, Jesus.
Like that's what they were like. Women need to be pure until they're married, and then 18 kids, please, on the double.
And then for all the people who are going to be like, I thought there was a theory that Jesus had kids. I like to think that he did, and then was like, why the fuck did we do that? I'm going to tell everyone.
Just like, fuck.
I like that. That's my new favorite headcanon about Jesus.
Literally, because especially if you combine it with the non-canonicals, because he's always like, why would you just bring more fucking people on this planet? That sucks. So it's just like, did Jesus have a kid and be like, fuck this?
Yeah, but Jesus loved kids so much in the Gospels too, which is like interesting.
It's so weird. Yeah, there's a lot of different things.
Kids and acknowledge that they're annoying as
fuck. Hell yeah!
I do it every day.
Yeah, any parent that straight up tells you their kid's not annoying is fucking lying. That's a lie.
Or they don't spend any time with them.
Hell yeah! Or they don't. That's a really good point, Mimi. Or they don't spend like enough time with them to know how fucking obnoxious they are. Because I guarantee it, every child on this planet is annoying in one way or another. I love my kids.
This is just a tired, sleep-deprived dad who was probably like super attentive to his kids, but then would look to other people and be like, "Don't do it, don't do it."
Yeah, right. Be like, nah.
Listen, I have a headcanon, and I don't care how this sounds, but I think the reason why we go from Jesus being like 12 at the temple to being 30, 32 years old is because he did have children. He ended up going off to have children in one way, shape, or form, and that's how he got so much of the fucking wisdom he got, because there's some shit you don't understand until you have had children.
It's true.
Yup.
That's true.
Like, I don't know how the hell he got to be so patient, but then got pissed off at a fig tree. That sounds like gentle parenting to me.
Yep. That just sounds like a really long day with your kids where like everything kind of went wrong. and you were really good the whole time, but then that one little thing happened and it was the straw that broke the camel's back. So a fig tree it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I told my parents, I was like, if I had a kid, I couldn't do it because, there's like a point where in kids' development, they're literally unable to understand irony. And so that's like the mimicry stage where they just mimic what they see and they think they're being really funny because they repeat the same joke that they heard, but like deep inside, everyone else is dying. So I would just like, and my boyfriend too is just as bad as me. So like, I know that we would both be watching the kids speak and we'd be like, why are you doing that? Like, why is there sound coming out of you right now? Stop that. Whatever the fuck you just said, never say it again. Like
That was
I
me with
can't
my
be a
first
parent.
child. And then I realized that I was being an asshole because they didn't understand. They didn't know better. And I got
Yeah.
better. Like, when you understand us how they are, you can be a little more lenient and just be like, hey, so I love your joke, but 3 times is enough. Let's go find a different
Yeah.
joke. Like,
Yeah, no. See,
but
I
no,
don't know
you're
if
not
I'll
wrong.
for that patience. That's why I'm like, nope, no kids for me because I don't want to look at my kid and be like, that's fucking cringy. Stop.
Hey, did you not hear
Sometimes
what
I'll
I
laugh at
said?
my kid. Sometimes I'll laugh at my kid, my eldest, because he's in that phase where he'll like do something where he thinks it's really funny, but it's like really cringy. And I'll just laugh at it because it's really cringy. And he thinks I'm laughing at him because I think he's funny.
Oh my god. I
It's a
think
good cover.
the
It's a good cover.
the biggest thing my kids understand right now is like, even though I am jump up in the evening, I will still look at them and go, bruh, the
Yeah.
fuck. And they'll
Yeah.
just be like, sorry, mom. And I'm like, can we go through this? Like, where was your brain? Talk me through this. Show me where you were thinking. Because I gotta know what the fuck. Like,
Right? Why? Why'd you do that today? Like, why? You tell me?
so back to purity culture.
Yeah.
Kids are tied to purity culture. I don't
Kids
know.
are tied to
They
purity
are.
culture and
Yeah.
like raising them,
Oh,
you know, like,
having
raising
them
them not to keep
being, yeah, being forced to have them. Like, I I did not, I will go on record and I will tell everybody, all of my oldest understands this when we sat down and first had her conversation about, what she wants for her future and stuff. And I was honest with her. I never wanted to have children. I never wanted to have children
Mm-hmm.
because I did not feel like I was worthy enough to be a mom because I was not living the way that I should. It was still ingrained in my head that I was not being a true woman because I didn't want children. And that was also like my rebellion part that you can't make me have kids, even though I'm supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've had children, I have grown so much and I love every single child that I've had. But having children is a subsect of the purity culture because it's ingrained in there. You're supposed to have kids. You
Yeah.
have to have kids to be a righteous woman. And it's like, well, thanks for making me feel like
Again,
shit. Purity culture.
I feel like a lot of these things are just like people like clinging way too hard to Paul's dick. I'm sorry, but like Paul, I love you, man, but for fuck's sake, they gotta let go of his willy. They gotta let go. They gotta let that man fly to the sky. They gotta let him just be, okay? Because when you read the Bible and realize that Paul's just like talking a lot of shit half the time, you can put some stuff down. You could be like, Paul, I'm glad you're so fucking passionate about circumcision, but I really don't care. So it's just like
Yeah.
it's easier to be like,
Isn't
great
circumcision
advice, Paul,
something?
but
I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right on this. But didn't Jesus like explicitly say like circumcision was not like important anymore because of him?
that was Paul. That was
That
factually
was Paul.
Yeah, Paul was like,
And
oh, that's the entire of Galatians is him bitching because like the brother of Jesus sent an apostle to tell the Gentiles to get circumcised, and Paul went on a whole ass rant
Oh
about
yeah,
like,
yeah,
fuck you don't need to do that. If anyone tells you anything other than I'm preaching, tell me shit, right? Like he went on a whole fucking tirade, and that's why like I read Paul and I'm like, my man, you do so much. You are so great, but wow, like I need
I
you
feel
to
like the reason for
flex.
circumcision was kind of like that whole, you're in the desert for 40 years, you don't want sand in your penis. That's
yeah.
literally where
It's
my
like
brain goes.
also
That's
like
literally.
I mean, no one else
circumcision
is doing it though.
back in the day, circumcision for ancient Israelites was very different than what we see as circumcision today. It was when they like say just the tip, it was literally like this extremely tiny piece of foreskin that was like barely even like usable or like whatever. It was very much like just, but nowadays they do like the whole procedure where like all like, you know, any male who was circumcised has an actual scar because of like
Yeah.
how it's like all whatever. So it's
Yeah,
not,
it was more of an identification. It was to
yeah, it was more of
separate.
an identification. Like the what it is today is like a whole discussion for a whole other day, and a weird niche thing that I know way too much about.
But also part of the purity culture.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's one of them. But I guess like to just like the last like question that I have for everybody is like what's like a piece of advice you would give to somebody who's trying to heal from purity culture? Like what's something that you did to help heal yourself or currently do to like or to help heal like or helping healing yourself? I did not phrase that right. But like for me personally, I think a big thing of like letting go of purity culture in my practice has been one working with Lilith, and I work with her like I work with her a lot about like confidence and reclaiming my power and like reclaiming myself, which is a lot of like purity culture stuff like to begin with, but there's also things that I don't like explicitly share online that like I've worked with her through, and she's helped me have a lot of like revelations and realizations about myself like through like the lens of purity culture and like what it has done to me and like what like you know I didn't admit about myself or like things that I didn't like want to admit like kind of thing. um through my work with her. So I think I would like I kind of like see her as like the deconstruction of purity deity within the Abrahamic. Because if you think of like her lore of her, like, you know, how she was going to be Adam's first wife, but she didn't want to go under him, sort of thing. Like in sex, she wanted to be on top and he didn't want that. So she walked away, like kind of thing, just to like summarize. She's very anti-purity culture, in my opinion. So I work with her a lot for that. I also like work with Venus a lot, and Venus is more like obviously like love and like romance and things like that, but with her I've been able to like start identifying clothes that make me feel really good in my body even if they're not like purity culture clothes. So like I've been wearing like more like crop tops and like things like that make me feel comfortable because I just feel like they fit me better. And like another real big thing, this is like cheesy, listening to music made by women. I feel like when I was in the church there was like an emphasis on like only either listening to like worship music or like, you know, not like, because like, you know, if you think about like all like mainstream pop stars and like famous women, right, they don't fit into the lines of purity culture. And I remember a big one when I was in the church was Taylor Swift. She was going through her Reputation era. That was when I like joined the church, and that was like her sexy era. So it was like very you know, this is like an example of who not to be. So like a big thing for me has been like reclaiming that and listening to music that was written by women and performed by women, listening to like an unhealthy amount of Taylor Swift music, and doing things like that and like doing direct things that they told me I couldn't do, just doing them because I fucking can and like I want to, like kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's like kind of how I've been healing from purity culture. That and like listening to like rap music too. I don't know why that helps, but rap music's very much has helped. Um, but that's mine.
Therapy was a big thing for me. That book Pure by Linda K. Klein, I think that's it's either Linda or Laura K. Klein. I think it's Linda K. Klein. Anyway, that was a good like jump start for me to just realize that I was not doing anything wrong. And also just being so open with my boyfriend about it. And that's hard for some people, I realize.
Mm,
But in being open with him, and he's not religious, but came to church with me a handful of times and kind of put the pieces together enough to understand what I was talking about. And he is very verbally and openly assuring of me, being like, hey, you are worth so much more to me. Like, bedroom stuff doesn't matter in the grand scheme of what you mean to me as a partner and as a human and as a friend. And being able to have that in to, you know, understand that my partnership is like anything in the bedroom is just a nice bonus, but knowing like with the utmost certainty that I have a heart-to-heart connection with this person and that my worth is not tied to my appearance or makeup or the bedroom or being a good like housewife or caretaker or anything like that. That is not what my worth is tied to. And obviously, you know, I don't need a man to tell me that, but it's nice to hear it from your partner when you have been through that kind of trauma. So just being very open and vulnerable with, you know, your partner, or if you are the partner, then your partner is having religious trauma, like you need to be the partner to be that source of assurance of like, hey, this is not the end all be all. You're than that. Like that is so important in a relationship where one or both parties has had this kind of trauma.
I agree, and that is something I totally forgot happened. Like right after I left the church, Jack was very reassuring of me and like kind of got me like
Yeah.
back. Like when I first left, I would like literally like every time we like did anything, I'd have a panic attack afterwards. Like so it like took a hot minute for your girl to get back, which is so funny because after I left the church, I was like, yeah, I wasn't that traumatized. And bitch, you were traumatized. Like, let's be
Mega. Damn.
so yeah, that's a very valid point. The support is really important. And if your partner is not willing to support you and you're going through that, should you be doing things like that with them? That's my
No,
question to you.
dump him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or her. Let's you know,
Yeah.
girlies can be as toxic. Let's not. I'm sorry, I'm a boy mom. I can't.
Well, I feel like also it's like people have had this idea that like if you're not super giga intimate all the time, that something's wrong with the relationship. Like I've had friends be like, "We haven't done anything in like a month. Is that bad?" I'm like, "Babe, what? It's a month." Like I get busy sometimes, and it'll be like 2 months, and I'll be like, "Oh shit!" Like 2 entire packets of birth control just went. Where the fuck am I? And both of us are just vibing because like
Yeah.
life happens. It'd be that way sometimes, but actually, since I am coming from a hypersexuality angle, though, I will say, watch European media, watch European movies, watch European things where bodies exist. Because, like, I was watching like a Slavic show on Netflix, and based around Slavic folklore, and the way that like the European gaze catches bodies is so unmanicured compared to America. America's like you always gotta have the perfect round boobs and the perfect ass and pose just right to look the sexiest you can at every possible fucking angle. Meanwhile, you look at European media, and I'm talking like your stereotypical romantic people, French, whatever. They have these women being boss ass bitches, but having the most lumpy titties, pancake ass, whatever you want. Their bodies are just there, and they won't try to pose them either. I'm watching the show, and they got women like hunched over doing weird shit, whole ass out, and they're just like a leg up here. Who knows what the fuck? Not even in sex, just existing.
Mhm.
Watch media that has women actually shown like fucking people and not like really cool sex dolls. That's one of the best ways to
Yeah.
realize like, oh shit, I'm a person. My body doesn't look Photoshop 25 fucking 8.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I would say it kind of goes back to one of the first points is that it might never heal. This trauma might never completely go away. It could be a matter of one day you're going to have a panic attack after thinking, oh, I haven't thought about it in 10 years. And another part's going to be, I have these children and, my husband looks at me or my partner looks at me in a certain way. And I just instantly, all I feel like is meat because all I was thought of was something to be sold off. And it doesn't matter how many years of therapy you go through, how accomplished you are, that little niggle is still going to be back there every so often for some reason or another. It may just pop back up, and that's okay. It is okay that your formative years were spent being brainwashed and you were taught something to not be valued in a way that you are worthy to be valued. And it doesn't mean that your healing journey or you as a person are any less just because it still pops up, just because that doubt pops up. It's okay. It's going to be your whole life because it was your whole life before you stepped away from the toxicity.
I like that advice. That's really good advice, Mimi. And I think it's a really great thing to like end on because I think that's going to resonate for a lot of people and especially people like, no matter where they are in their deconstruction journey, but I feel like a lot of people who listen to this are very like early on in it and like the permission to not be okay is
Yeah.
really like validating, like I don't feel like a lot of people give themselves permission to like not be okay. So like if you need that, you have it sort of thing.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great note to like end on. But does everybody want to go around and like share where other people can find you on the internets? And I'll leave everybody's socials in the show notes page, obviously. But Hannah, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so I go by spirituality on TikTok, but spelled TEA because it's a pun and I think it's hilarious. I have all kinds of Christian witch content on there. And I have more, I'm trying to bring back my YouTube channel. That's in the works. I have a podcast too that I have mainly been doing on a platform called Stereo. I'm still doing it there, but I'm slowly uploading past episodes to Spotify as well. So I'll hopefully be caught up with that in a couple weeks. I think I said Patreon. I don't know if I said Patreon. I have Patreon too. And all my other social medias and whatnot can be found in the link in my TikTok bio if you feel so inclined to check them out.
Yeah. Sarah, where can people find you?
Yeah, literally everywhere online, honestly. But my main ones are, TikTok, I've got Instagram, I've got YouTube. And on TikTok's where I'm the most active. That's where I shit post the most, and also where I theology post the most. But I have a Patreon as well. And on Patreon, you can get early access to all of my YouTube stuff. You can vote for topics. That's the only place you can see the written interpretations of the cards I pull for Interview with the Gods, and a lot more stuff. So that's a really fun place to look. I also have a website that is so stupidly full of goodies. Treat it like a fucking candy store because there's things you can buy. There's courses, there's tarot readings, dumb amount of stuff. So, and my books, because Mimi and I are writing a Christian Witch intro book. I write fantasy. There's a lot. Again, just go in there like a child in the middle of those old school Disney stores, and you will have a blast.
Yeah, no, Sarah has a lot of content. Everybody has a lot of content. Mimi, where could we find you on the interwebs?
I am the feral Southern housewife on the YouTubes and the TikTok and Instagram and my blog, which has a second post now. I'm so proud of myself. I'm putting the fine-tuned parts of the curriculum additions for witchy homeschooling stuff, like Christian witchy homeschooling stuff. So that'll be up here soon so we can get ready for the next school year. And yeah, I talk about just like the everyday living stuff on there. Sometimes there's shenanigans, sometimes it's advice, sometimes it's a trend. You never know what you're gonna get.
Mimi's TikTok is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna find.
But you bought the fucking chocolates
But you
anyway.
bought them. So that's that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here on this episode. I appreciate it. I will leave all of everybody's links in the show notes page. And yeah, all right. So that concludes the Purity Culture episode of the Jesus Witch podcast. Thank you for hanging on this. It was a wild ride, filled with a lot of ADHD tangents, but I think it was really good. So that's that.